who've come out the last couple days. We appreciate you coming back again, and we hope that we can share with you tonight what we've been working on over the past couple days. So Monday we were here early and worked through the day up until our second round of roundtable discussions and discussions at the stations, the board stations. And then today we've been working again early. We were here early and working through the day up until this point. Some of you stopped in for our pinup session. That was earlier today starting at 2 p.m. If you weren't able to make any of those events, we're going to do a recap just so I can get a sense of, we're not going to repeat some of the team introductions and other things if people were here. Did anybody not attend portions of the Charrette yet? Just raise your hand. So one. Okay, so we'll do a quick overview of some of that. It's not nearly as in-depth as we did on the opening night, but just so we catch people up to speed, we will do a brief intro. So today, other than the intro, we'll do the plan requirements. Again, a summary of not as full and robust as we did before. We'll talk about the Mount Airy Vision Plan, I think I switched the order, plan benefits, the pre-concept sketch plan, and what we've done in between now and then. We'll talk about what we heard, how we shifted the plan and responded to the comments that we heard, and then we'll talk briefly at the end about next steps. And after all the presentation is done, it shouldn't be too lengthy. We'll meet, we have plenty of time to meet you at the boards. There'll be a few of us scattered about the room at the board stations. So please come up to us afterwards, ask questions one-on-one, so that we can answer any questions that you still may have. So with that, we'll get started. I'm just gonna do this, sorry. Okay. Just gonna do this again. Okay. So just to summarize, we were here on Saturday. We did a presentation, the opening presentation, and then we met at roundtable discussions or up at the stations. We asked questions, we took questions. People were able to give us feedback on some of the imagery that we brought. And then on Monday, we did the same thing again, just at a different time slot, so people who weren't able to make it on Saturday could show up on Monday night. We did see a few people that came on both nights. We were also very fortunate last night to have a troop of scouts come in and do this as part of their civics lessons, so they participated last evening and gave us a different perspective as well. So tonight, I mentioned today, earlier in the day, we had our afternoon pinup. And then here we are on the last day in the last event, which is this final presentation and open house. The remainder of the process after tonight is that we will, we've been sketching, and literally sketching, not just drawing in CAD and other, but we've been sketching the plan changes. So we'll certainly need to go back to our offices and draw this in the computer fully. We'll be doing a number of things. It will take us 2 to 3 weeks to produce the new version of the pre-concept sketch plan. Once that's done and resubmitted, there will be a public hearing, joint workshops, and the council decision. All right. So this is just, I'm not going to go through that, but we've talked about it. Basically, we had on this side of the room, we had round tables with facilitators and note takers. On that side of the room, we had boards, some of which you still see up, some of which we've taken down. They're probably no longer syncing with the plan that we have. So before we get into the plan changes, I'll ask Clerk Wagner to come up for Pleasance Development and just give a quick overview.
Sure. For the third night, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming out. We're very excited how many people came out and gave us input. Very happy with all the town's participation. We saw most of the town council here, planning commission members, staff members, and most importantly, residents of the town. And I think as we go through and as we had on this little storyboard over here, if any of you heard the explanation of that, we made every attempt to respond to as many things as we could. We can't make everyone happy. I think all would be in agreement in that. But I do want to thank Cecily and her team. They've been working very hard over the last several days. I didn't realize that I was going to be the one running out for food for lunch and dinner, but I was happy to do that.
Thank you, Clark.
to keep them working hard. And thank Ron Thompson as well for his participation in this event, and the rest of our Pleasance development team who came out as well. So
Great.
let's keep going.
Yeah, and I just want to take a moment to give a shout out to the members of our team who are here. Matt D'Amico has led the charge with a lot of the planning work that you've seen. Angela's been in it from the start, way back when we first started in 2022, and has had her first Charrette experience coming out, graduated last year from the University of Maryland School of Architecture. So thankful to have her here. Mackenzie is an old pro, has been helping out. There you are, Mackenzie. Has helped out on everything from point A to Z and in between. We also had two members who are not here tonight, Sunny and PJ, who have heard great feedback from those who participated at their tables. They helped us facilitate. And then a member who already headed back to Pittsburgh, JJ, not with Design Collective, but he's an honorary member any day. He's done some of the illustrations that we'll share with you all in the last day and a half. Okay, so we'll just skip through this. So if you missed it the first time, I'll just briefly touch on the process. Mount Airy Vision Plan didn't necessarily kick off this effort, but it preceded this effort, and it's a plan that we need to be in conformance with, particularly on the Beck West property, which you'll see in a minute. Following that, the mixed-use development ordinance was passed in August of 2022. We then, as a development team, submitted the pre-concept sketch plan last fall. There was a planning commission event in January held by the town. We attended and shared a presentation then. Pleasance Development then offered to have this charrette, which is outside of really the required process, but was a step to try to, hear people, listen, and make the changes that we've been able to make. As I mentioned, I won't go through this. We'll go through those other steps following the charrette. Balance plan, most of you heard this, but just to summarize by saying we as a design team need to take all of these different inputs and requirements and come up with a balance plan. It's not one or the other, or a couple, a few. They all have to all feed into a balanced plan. So as Clark said, we can't make everyone happy. We don't start off, and we're not trying to do that. We're trying to meet everyone, hear and listen to the concerns, try to push the needle to where we can say, okay, we did our best. We really think this is what's going to be the best direction forward for the development team, for the town, for the community, and to make this all work. But we also have all these other considerations, APFO requirements, health safety code requirements, zoning regulations, and the environmental constraints of the site itself that all play into that. And there are probably others that I haven't listed here, but this is generally how we come up with a balanced plan. Okay, so the Mount Airy Vision Plan that I mentioned preceded. I mentioned the area of Beck West, which is shown in this area 4 of the Downtown Vision Plan. The Downtown Vision Plan also looked at Main Street, but where we really needed to look for this project was the area of the Beck property that stretches west of 27. Some of the things that were critical or were pieces of that plan were to connect Center Street, that even preceded the vision plan, to have a hub of commercial along that continuing spine out to 27, to bring the character of the town out to 27 instead of letting the auto-centric highway, commercial and other uses move into town. So that was key, to have a balanced mix of uses, to have a variety of open spaces within it, to have complete streets to serve vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and a number of other things. Those are the highlights. And then we showed a comparison between the vision plan back in 2018 and the pre-concept sketch plan as submitted in November. I won't go into that. So now what we heard, so over these past 3 days, this is a summary, of course. We got a lot of comments, sticky notes on the boards, dots on the boards, conversation that was recorded by note takers, questions that we had, and then other discussions with town departments such as Parks and Recs, who came in for a meeting during the Charrette time, midday. This is just a summary of what we heard on the, let's see, on your left, and on your left are the general points of consensus, meaning not everyone, but the majority of people that we heard from agreed that we should lessen the impact on schools. Probably the top thing we heard. Lessen traffic impact. Provide senior housing and options, a variety of types. Add commercial to Beck East, meaning distribute commercial more evenly from west to east. Preserve more of the woods forest stand on Beck East. And then lower density. For the varied opinions, and there were quite a few of these, maybe some surprisingly, others not, connecting Center Street. That was something that, I would say the majority of people agreed on, but there were certainly people who said, I don't want Center Street connected. Extending the rail trail east of 27, and mainly that has to do with the third bullet down, crossing this Center Street and Maryland 27 intersection. Some agreed that a signal with an at-grade pedestrian bicycle crossing would be okay, as long as it incorporates the best practices for safety in coordination with the Maryland Department of Transportation, or SHA. Some wanted a pedestrian bridge, others wanted a tunnel to cross that intersection. Some wanted no tunnel because of the perception of going underneath. And so there are a variety of opinions. There was not really one or the other. It was truly a varied response to that discussion. Multifamily residential, another one that had a multitude of opinions about it. Some wanted none. Some said fine. Some said okay, but only if senior. Others said okay, only if on the west side. Some said only on the east side. So again, a variety of responses there. The use of the parcel to be dedicated to the town, and I'll point out where that is in just a moment. Some, saw I think we had come in with a pre-concept sketch plan showing a U12 soccer field. Some said that's not what we need the most of. Some said, well, the police can find a different spot. A community center would be better here. So again, a variety of opinions on the use of that 3-acre site, of what it could be used for, what would be the best what would serve the town best. Another one would be residential, providing residential for a range of incomes. Some said, no, only higher end single family detached, don't want anything else. Others said only market rate, but in a variety is okay, meaning townhouses, cottages, manors, villas. Others said, yeah, it's important to include starter homes, something someone can move into just coming out of college or just graduating, that they could have as a starting home. Others said, yep, we definitely need affordable senior housing. And others said, yes, in fact, we should include MPDUs, moderately priced dwelling units, more towards the affordable end of the spectrum. So again, there was a variety of opinions throughout the 3 days of what we heard. Let me just talk through how we responded to some of these, and Clark, feel free to jump in as you'd like. So on the first two under general consensus, lessen impact on schools and lessen lessen impact on traffic. And we'll even include the next one down. We've responded to those, and we'll show you just in a moment. But the key is in the third bullet. So I'll touch on that in just a moment. But we think we've responded to those first 3 bullets in the plans that we've come up with. Adding commercial to the Beck east side to distribute the commercial more evenly on both sides. We've responded to that. Preserve more of the woods and forest stand on Beck East. We have, and we've in particular looked at a tree survey, pinpointed some of the old growth trees that are closer to the south end or towards the Twin Arch Shopping Center, and tried to save more of those trees. Lowering density. We definitely have, but we'll have to get back to you on the exact numbers because we've been doing sketch plans. We really need to do an actual count of how many lots we now have and of what type. Not even our client knows at this point because we've been sketching up to the last minute.
Save for the commercial.
Same for the commercial, right. On the varied opinions, we absolutely are still connecting Center Street. That's required. That's a town requirement of the vision plan, and it's been a goal of the town for some time. So we absolutely are doing that. Extending the rail trail east of Maryland 27, we hope to do that, and we hope to do that. We will definitely prepare for a signal with an at-grade crossing, working with SHA to make that as safe as possible. We heard a variety of thoughts on how to do that. We need to have that conversation with the State Highway Department. So that's going to have to happen, not only post this charrette, but going into concept plan, et cetera. So that's a little bit down the road. What we can say is that for the ideas of the pedestrian bridge or a tunnel, if that's desired by the town, we'll try to make as many points of connection where the trail comes out to set that trail at an elevation or the start and stop of that to set the town up to connect with a bridge or a tunnel in the future. Just immediately, we don't control the land that would be the landing point for either the bridge or the tunnel, so we cannot physically do that, but we will set up and work with the town if that's something in the future that will be done. But we certainly will be preparing for that. Multifamily residential, yes, we still are including this, but we'll tell you how it's morphed from market rate to another focus on multifamily. The use of the parcel to be dedicated to the town, I think some of you heard us say this. We're not going to be drawing anything on that going forward. We're going to show the land and let the town decide what the highest and best use for the town is. So the town can make the decision to any number of things. So please stay vocal about that. What is the highest and best need? But that will be turned over to the town. It's basically it is staying in the same position. So it's still at that prominent, kind of entry from 27 to Center Street, just south of Watkins Park. And then we definitely are providing residential for a range of incomes, but at this point, only market rate. That is what the intent of Pleasance is to do, and so that's what we're going forward with. So just to set up, how we've listened. Now, this is just a summary we've looked at, and you can see them behind you on the boards. Any imagery that more than 5 people put green dots on, they're circled in pink. Some have many more. Some have like 20 plus green dots on them, just to give you a sense of what you and your neighbors decided were images that were appropriate and some that might not be the best suited for Mount Airy. So when we include, start writing the pattern book, we'll be taking these into consideration. When we start, we have started doing renderings, and some of the imagery inform those renderings, as you'll see. But as we start to detail, those open spaces even into the future, some of these images will help inform that. So you can see things like an event space, a playground certainly, integrated stormwater management, or the fact that kids are playing on those cool sculptures and that is in one of our projects. A community garden. Some people, I know there is a community garden in town, but a lot of people thought, well, if we're building more, Maybe something on the east side of town is a good thing to have. You don't want to be too far away from that. Amenities and activities, a farmer's market, maybe. Interactive recreation, certainly. Street festivals, like provide a space for that, as well as food truck events and a movie night. All of those things, great. Streetscape and furnishings. I don't know, most of these were okay with most, a lot of people. I don't think people thought the contemporary bike racks are, suitable for Mount Airy. That makes sense. Okay, things like streetscape elements, more of these, more of the kind of paving, having sidewalks with planters, street trees, of course, native plants, rank tie, and buffered sidewalks, so people can walk, have a little space between the moving vehicles and the sidewalk. For architecture, senior housing, single-family residential, and the form of that retail, again, all did pretty well. All right, so let's go into, this is the plan that we showed you on Saturday, and again, if you came again, on Monday night. This is what we submitted in November or fall of last year. And just to point out a couple things, again, Center Street coming through, connected, 27 here, the continuation of the rail trail on the east side, the forest stand that we had preserved, about 9 acres of forest stand here, the connection of Century Drive to Center Street extended, all played in. And also I'll just point out here that core of commercial here, some additional commercial, maybe a daycare here, and a variety of open spaces throughout the plan. Let me see, I think I have this in again. We did a comparison of lots, comparing what's on Carroll Avenue currently and some of the housing that exists within the town to some of the lots that we had planned on the west side, just showing that they're fairly comparable in terms of the lot size, the setback, and some other features. This is the area for the acreage for the town. And again, going forward, we won't show a police station footprint here, and we won't show a U12. We'll, again, let the town decide what the best needs are for that. Here I'm going to spend a little bit more time. Especially that info piece, I want to spend a little bit more time. This is, although a sketch, it really is the diagram that sets up some of the main ideas of how we responded to things. So again, just to orient, we have Maryland 27 here. We have some ideas, again, responding to the comments is to have yes for here, but also to add some commercial to the east side of 27, and here just next to the church sitting on the corner. Another thing, again, dedicate that land to the town, but don't define a use for it. Let the town determine its use. Having a variety of open spaces, these are some that were already shown. We've added a green here. And then I'll skip that for a second, but we've also, in terms of green space, I mentioned trying to keep a stand of trees. There are a lot of the heritage trees or contributing trees that are located in this southwest corner of the east side. And so you can see that the geometry of this changed a little bit. The area of this is largely the same, but we've added this because a lot of the trees are in that quadrant. We've also backed off the development here. We've doubled the amount of buffer along that southern edge to, again, keep more of the trees there. We are still protecting, this is where the wetlands area is, and we're in a buffer here, so we're keeping that, of course. And again, we still included, even with the new plan, a sprinkling of those smaller greens throughout both sides of the property. One thing that you may have seen here is that all of the east side now, we're considering for senior housing, all of it. So that means that schools will be less impacted. In fact, a large majority of the housing that was shown on here that was market rate for all ages will now have seniors, which would preclude any impact for those units on schools. Another thing is the traffic impacts are a lot less with seniors with that. Pleasance is okay with that because there's a high demand in the market for that. So we're entering a time, actually we're already in it, that's called the silver tsunami. It's over the next now 15 to 20 years, we'll see an increase of seniors within the population. I'll be part of that. I'm right on the cusp of that myself. So we'll see that trend continue for the next 15 to 20 years. And we need a place where people who live in Mount Airy want to stay in Mount Airy, but don't really have options left. I think we heard quite a bit that the senior housing in town, Wildwood, is very popular. It's very expensive now, and there is basically no vacancies and nothing on the market that people can move into. So having that, I think it helps with the community concerns. It also is something that Pleasance said, yes, we can do that because there's such a demand for that. Absolutely, that's a win-win. We also are looking at having no rental apartments here, taking the apartments that were here, and there were about 200 of them, and moving those over to where the grocery store was, that 30,000 square foot grocer was, and putting senior apartments here. I'll show you two options for that layout in just a minute. 200 units were shown. We're looking at more like 140 to 150 senior apartments in this plan. And yes, the density has gone down. I just want to make that clear because to move some of these things around, save more of the trees there, we've definitely reduced the number. I can't tell you tonight because I truthfully don't know exactly how much of what type has been reduced, but we will be doing that as we draw up this plan a little bit more accuracy on the computers back at the office. We've also, folks talked about, hey, there is a row of trees along the cornfield here. We'd like to keep some of those. So we think some of those we've already allowed for, but we also changed the lots here to accommodate more, deeper lots plus additional buffer. We lost 2 townhouses doing that. Here, no loss of units, but we were able to make those units deeper just by reconfiguring the plan. I think I got everything there. Oops. Okay, so here's one of the options on Beck West. So again, Center Street here, Route 27 here. You'll recall from the previous plans, there was that 30,000 square foot grocer and parking field here. In this option, we've shown senior apartments. Here, these 2 buildings have 2 stories of units above the commercial on the ground floor. That commercial might be, this could actually be amenity space, the leasing center on the ground floor for the senior, or it could be professional offices, physical therapy, et cetera, that might benefit from being adjacent to, literally right below the senior housing. The seniors would have their own community center, pool, amenities basically for the seniors here. Other than the other plan changes I mentioned with these lots and making these deeper, the plan hasn't changed a whole lot beyond those tweaks. Except, one thing, we did add a green space here at the end. So again, took off a few of the townhouses and added a green space here at the end of the block, setting back from 27. Okay, scheme number 2, a little bit different, not with the majority of the plan, but really in the senior. There's a little bit of concern on Pleasance's part that putting senior apartments above the residential might be difficult. It's 2 different deals. It's might be more difficult to do. Instead here, these are the 2-story commercial buildings again, similar to what we had shown previously. And the senior apartments start to take away some of the more townhouses, but again in that 140 to 150 range of apartments within this configuration. So you would come in and circulate around, have a drop off, and again have that amenity space for the seniors and a courtyard space. Okay, and this is a sketch, a line drawing of what that could look like, but why look at it in black and white when you can look at it in color, right? So JJ not only drew these, over the 2 days, but also got to the point of at least doing a color wash on these to give a better indication. So I'll just kind of go through some of the orientation here. This is Center Street along the edge here. The space for the Mount Airy would be kind of off to the lower right-hand side. The same Beck Drive is located here off of Center Street. You can see the plaza. This is the same configuration as we had previously. It just helps to see it in a rendering, I think, a little bit more. You can see this would, as I mentioned, it would either be 2 or 3 stories. I think we would like to have a conversation with the town about the building height. It's 40 stories. We can do this exact dimension of the building. There's 3 stories within that height. If we want to put a roof on that instead of, a sloped roof instead of a flat roof, we might have to have a conversation about how we measure that 40 feet. Is it from ground plane to the eave, meaning or the parapet? Or, is it midway through the roof? And we just have to have a conversation, a little bit of a detail, but it's something as, architects and planners we want to look at to get the right character to go with the town. So in some of the other schemes that we've been trying this afternoon, of course, we've inserted more of the senior buildings here. So some of this parking lot goes away, becomes the edge of the green space for the senior buildings. Here you can see that about an acre of central green as you move further along Beck Drive. And again, most of this is the same as had been planned in the pre-concept plan. The trees here are not on the property, not on the Beck property. They kind of happen if you have driven down Center Street. It's just after that where it terminates. There's a stand of trees here. So that's just showing what exists already. But you can see that these are not, buildings right up against the sidewalk here. There's a lot of room for not only trees, but also parallel parking, spill out space for if there are restaurants that could spill out onto these spaces, lawn space in between. Again, this would go from Center Street up to this area. So this is actually where the parking lot shown is actually higher than Center Street. I think that's, but we're doing our best to tuck parking behind the buildings, have on-street parking, have street trees, and to emulate the character of Main Street. We heard that a lot from folks. Okay, moving over.
Park Avenue off the page. Park Avenue top
is.
Park Avenue at the top or off the page?
Off the page.
Yeah, it would be well off. Yep. Okay, so moving on to Beck East. We see that the area that we had in terms of forest preservation, it's largely the same. It's been reconfigured a little bit just for the geometries. This is the new area that we saved, and we saved it because the majority of those contributing trees, heritage trees, are located. You can see a few sprinkled in the area here, but this was the area when we had that tree survey that we could see, okay, yep, there is a pocket of those, so we'll try to save those. We've, again, taken out quite a bit of land that was previously developed in order to do that. Another thing you can see here in option 1 is, a small commercial building located here with its parking off to the side, a little bit larger commercial that you could, should have visibility coming up 27 and located off of it. These are not as big as you can see the previous footprint. So this was 30, these might be in the range of 15 to 20,000 square feet. What I would call a junior anchor as opposed to like the size of a small grocer. This grocery store, just to put it in perspective, is about the size of a Trader Joe's or something of that size. It certainly wasn't ever imagined to be a Wegmans or even a Giant. But this would come in and this would go away. Beyond that, again, this is all now senior housing, so we had to replat these blocks and streets to work with the unit types. I think Dan from Pleasance made calls to six or seven builders over the past 2 days to ask them, what product would you look at in this market? How deep are your lots? What are the unit plan sizes? What's the width? And the lot plans were developed or drawn. They are sketchy, I give you that, but we measured them out to fit those potential senior product types. But you can see that similar to the other plan, there's still these pocket greens, neighborhood greens sprinkled throughout the plan. So largely, the plan has stayed intact in form, but we've tried to make adjustments to listen to what you all said about lessening the impact, including saving more trees, having senior housing. Just ignore this is no longer a daycare. It just didn't get cropped out.
So on this plan, there's no single-family home?
There would be single-family detached homes, but they would be for seniors, not for general unage restrict. I mean, the seniors are all, the single-family detached are all of the pale yellow, the yellows, the pale yellow here and the yellow here. So all of these as well as all of these. The attached product is the remainder of it. The darker yellow and the brownish color are the attached product. And those could be villas, those could be other uses. We've been looking at product types for those and trying to find things that are similar to wildwood or other uses around that would be compatible with the town.
So basically what you're showing there are the lots.
Yeah, those are the lots, yep. Okay, so again, black and white sketch, and then in color, this is obviously, well, maybe not obvious, but it's looking across the forest stand. The area that we saved of trees would be down here. We're looking along that large around 9 acre tree save area here, forest stand. You can see some of those attached greens coming off of that and some of the road network. This is looking towards the Nils farm. So that'd be largely looking, that's my error. That did not get changed. Ignore that. It should say Beck property east and looking, I guess that would be north. North or, yeah, north. Generally just straight north, I guess. Anyway, I think this gives a sense of how much of those, the trees are saved. And this is rolling topography. One thing that's important to note, in order to save those trees, we have to run the street along the existing topo, right? You can't change the topo and save the trees. That doesn't go hand in hand. So even with the previous scheme, we were following the topo lines around to preserve as much of those trees. Previous schemes or concepts before ours mass graded this whole thing, taking out all of those trees. Okay, here we're looking at a small pocket park. This is about 1/3 of an acre, but just to show, and this is on the east side, so this is still senior housing. Off to the lower left is 2-story detached product, front loaded. You can see a driveway here. At the head of the green are 3 cottage size senior houses, detached houses with off a lane, and then off to the upper right are some townhouse product. Okay, again, similar to the west, there's a network of streets, parallel parking, buffered sidewalks, and then in the main space, in this open space, it's only 1/3 of an acre, but we wanted to illustrate this in particular because It allows for an area for, fire pit and seating for these tiered retaining walls. Again, there is still slope in this area, so we have to accommodate that through the greens. But it allows for some nice sculpting of that space, some seating on those walls, even some, I wouldn't call this an amphitheater, but some tiered seating along there, but also areas for vegetation, stormwater, infiltration, etc. All right. No, they would. They have a rear yard, and then, but it's more of a small space, a patio space. It would be about the size of a large living room area. The ones here that are front loaded have what a typical rear yard. They are front loaded, so they have a fairly large rear yard space. Sorry, I know there's a lot of questions. I'm going to say, yeah, well,
Not
and
villas.
villas. Sorry, terminology. Attached product, I call them townhouse, but villa is another terminology I know you're more familiar with here. It's just how it's just more the typical lingo that I'm
We
using.
can skip this since we have it on the board.
Okay. Well, I think then, I know I did hear a number of questions. That's it for the presentation. Ask Clark to come up and.
Sure. So next steps. One of the next steps Cecily already alluded to. We have to go back and finalize this plan. It was obviously done very quickly, so there's a lot of ground truthing that has to go on with the plan itself. We also have to run our own financial model, make sure this plan is going to work for us and the project is economically viable. We'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks. We'll be talking to builders, of course, both on the commercial and residential side, to get their input so that we have a plan that's real. We don't want to show you something that we can't deliver. In addition to that, we're rolling out a website for the project. So a lot of the information from the Charrette we'll be posting on the website. So if you want to come back to that site, you'll be able to look at the results of the Charrette and see some of the input we got. So that's kind of the early next steps, other than submitting the plan back to the town so we can go to a public hearing. That's sort of after what I just talked about, that would be the step after that. And I think we're going to take questions over at the boards. A number of us will be over at the boards. And so this is just planned to be very informal. Come up and ask your questions there.
Yeah, and I'll do a time check, but I think we have plenty of time. So let's see, we're here until 9 p.m. if needed. I will say we'd be happy to go home early, but if you have lots of questions, we'll be here until 9. Our team has been packing up behind the wall, so I think thank you for coming out, and if you have questions, come on over to the boards. Clark, myself, and others will be over there, and maybe we can even spread out some others. So that's it for the presentation. If you have a question, just come on over. We'll spread out the boards a little bit.
If this is being filmed, how are we going to get the answers if we're over there asking questions? How are we going to film and document the answers we're getting one-on-one?
We're going to continue to answer questions well into the future beyond this presentation and beyond others. If you have an individual question, come on up and ask. As Clark mentioned, we'll post some of the outcomes, and then there will be public hearings, many more steps. So, again, we're here to answer as many questions as we can tonight, and we'll continue to do that into the future as well. Hang on a second. I think we're ending the presentation, so let me turn that off. But then I'll handle your question over there. I don't have an exact number now. It's more than what it was.